To Fortify Your Future, a podcast for professionals who currently have executive oversight of or aspirations of leading the safety and security function for their organization. I am your host, Ken Carrasco, and joining me today is Bryan Banta. Bryan brings over 20 years of proven experience leading and managing teams across multiple geographies, industries, and functions. Bryan began his career at Cisco as an IT engineer with a focus on software development. While at Cisco, Bryan expanded into various roles, including project and program management, security business operations, and global protective services before moving into the field of human resources. Early in his career, Bryan also spent time working for the Department of Justice, the FBI, as a special agent focused on counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and cybercrimes. Bryan also shares a love for the martial arts and has a black belt in Aikido. He has opened, operated, and been the lead instructor for multiple dojos over the years and enjoys bringing the principles of Aikido to the corporate world through workshops and seminars and his unique leadership style. Bryan holds a bachelor's degree in business administration with an emphasis in information systems management from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and has recently become an author, publishing his new book, Leadership Uncomplicated, now available on Amazon. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Bryan. Thank you very much. And I have my copy of your
Oh,
book.
nice.
So we got that here. We'll be
All
talking
right.
about that a little bit later in the podcast. But what I like to lead with is something that I'm a big advocate for, and that's about leading with value. So right off the top, is there something, some guidance, some information, something that you can provide our listeners that they can take away that's actionable?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, by the way, that you do that. I think given the current landscape, the market, kind of where we are, one of the things I always like to do is sort of open my door, right? So if somebody's interested in reaching out, I'm on LinkedIn. I am absolutely more than happy to help people. I think on a one-on-one basis, right? Feel free, it's a free consultation, but reach out to me because I think it's really important, those of us, whether you're in the security industry looking to get out, move into something different, or just expand your network. I think we all need to be working on building the relationships in our network. And I'm always the first to take the step and say, well, reach out to me, right? How do we help one another reach the next step in our careers or whatever goal we're working on? So I would encourage folks, if you're listening and are interested, absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to connect, see where you're at, and see where I can help.
Great, great. And I'll include a link to your direct profile so they can get in contact with you. So appreciate that very much, Bryan. So in thinking about, I talked about, your background and your experience, and I'd like to, get into a little bit of detail about your pathway and the course that you took relative to, your career and in particular leadership and concentrate in that realm. Can you talk to us a little bit about your specific pathway? Has your career developed over the years and the different avenues that you've gone in, the functional areas, and what that looked like over the course of your career?
Yeah, and thank you. Great intro, by the way. As your listeners may kind of picked up on, I've been lucky enough to have a pretty diverse career. Um, it it certainly started in the world of technology, and I think one of the things that's been very helpful for me on my road towards leadership, and interesting enough, leadership in multiple domains, being whether it's public sector, security, now human resources. I think the real path in achieving some of the opportunities that I have is really around being involved in areas and with skill sets that are very relevant, right? So I think from a starting point, having the skill sets that people are looking for, technology was a huge one of those, right? As the world gets more technical, that's been really key. And then of course that allows opportunities, which then diversified my various jobs, which then gave me experience across multiple domains. So think of it as building a portfolio, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I've really built my career on, there's some commonalities, right? Technology's been one of them. No matter where you go, technology exists. So being comfortable around that, understanding the details has made me, I think, marketable in that way. But then applying diverse expertise across multiple areas, I think has allowed me to become a better leader and then get into the leadership roles. It's an interesting change, right? When you move from, I mean, if you think about, look at it this way, from the time you enter school up until a leadership role, it's all about individual contribution. All right, it's what skills do you bring? What can you do? What do you translate in terms of deliverables into value? What do you create? What do you build? When you become a leader, I like to always kind of refer to it as moving from individual contribution to being a people leader is moving from, a lot of times it feels like moving from the world of IQ, like what smarts do you bring, what skills do you bring to the world of EQ, emotional intelligence, right? It is a complete shift. I started to notice, I think, early in my career that I was very comfortable and I took an interest in how my colleagues, how do we work together, breaking down silos. Some of the things that I think translated later in my leadership roles or leadership opportunities very well. I just have always had an interest in, having someone's back, working as a team, and then looking for opportunities where I started to realize, hey, I seem to be doing something right as you sort of inspire momentum. People come to you, they trust you. By the way, trust and integrity are very, very key, as you know. And then applying that, like getting an actual formal people leadership role. And it's much different, in whatever sector you're in, whether it's private sector or public sector, being in a leadership role, there's always like differences. But at the end of the day, it's all about people. Doesn't matter where you're from, right? Doesn't matter what technical background or non-technical background that you have. And I really had an aptitude for that and really enjoyed it. I mean, people leadership is not for everyone. People leadership and being in a leadership role is not, having a fancy title in a corner office and dictating to people what to do. That's not leadership. There's an element of management, of course, that is involved there. But I really, really was drawn towards, and I would say probably earlier in my career, I wasn't even aware of that. It's just to sort of find yourself in a situation where people come to you for leadership, even if you're not looking for it, and you realize that you're kind of stepping up. And so I started to pursue specifically opportunities where I could lead a team. And then I mold my career around how do I achieve those goals, right? So one of the things I think is really important for folks to kind of realize is very early in my career, I was of this mindset like, oh, I will come into my professional career. I will do a great job. I will do the best I can. And then I will be rewarded. People will come to me, right, with an opportunity. Do you want to do X, Y, or Z? Absolutely not. Maybe that happens on an edge case. But the reality is, and I kind of tease with my family all the time, we have this saying, the reward for good work is more work, right? It's never somebody saying, hey, you're doing amazing. How'd you like to come and do this? It does happen. Don't get me wrong, that can happen. But most of the time it's like, you're doing a great job. Now keep doing more of it, right? So you have to take the reins of your career, understand it is your career, regardless of which banner you're working under, and take action towards achieving that goal. And in my case, I want to be in a people leadership role. I enjoy leading human beings. It's not about telling them what to do. What I like about it is the opportunity to help others unlock their skill sets, their strengths. It's interesting. It's almost been like a superpower over the years, like identifying and seeing people's talent and strengths even before they do, helping them identify that and then apply that. So I sought out opportunities, right? And fortunately, as you mentioned, working at Cisco for many years, almost 17 years with Cisco, I was given the opportunity to take on a team there, which was great. But I had to take the action. I had to make the effort to say, this is what I want to achieve. Here's what I bring to the table, and got the opportunity. And then, of course, from there, you being a first-time manager, and then you sort of kind of slowly build that up. Exciting opportunity, because then you get to see, like, are you really leading people? Or is that really happening? Or are you managing teams, right? And I have this saying that, all leaders must still manage some aspects, right? But not all managers will lead. And I think that is something that is pervasive across a lot of organizations, right? It's the old, I forget the quote, but most organizations are overmanaged and underled. And I think that's absolutely true. So really important to take action. I enjoyed it. And then building upon that is you sort of test the waters. Like I have an instinct about how I would like to lead, and then you apply it in the real world. And then you have to be humble enough to go, oh, that didn't quite work. Again, the focus being on people. What is working? How are you actually enabling other people's careers and talent? And of course, that aligns with your whatever your business objectives are. And then you slowly build that. And that's what I did, was start to slowly build the leadership muscle until I got to the point where I'm at now, where being a director for an organization, leading talent initiatives, been very exciting, and sort of applying leadership principles, but at scale, which is absolutely amazing. So hopefully that's helpful in understanding a little bit of kind of how I got into the world of leadership and what that's all about. I know we can kind of deep dive a bit more, but it's been a fun journey.
No, and that's wonderful. And in terms of, for those individuals who are aspiring to become leaders, and let's say, certainly you, just based upon what you've done in the different avenues, different areas that you've gone through in your career, there's no question, you've had to adapt. But when you look at the transition from being an IC, an independent contributor, individual contributor, to a leader, would you characterize that as having to reinvent yourself? Or did it come to some degree natural or comfortable for you as you sort of, were exposed to certain things? Can you sort of dig a little bit deeper into what you actually felt as you were going through your challenges, the opportunities, and whether or not you would characterize it as a reinvention of yourself? And if so, what came with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure if I would characterize it as it felt like a reinvention more than it really felt like an evolution of my career. And what I mean by that is I talked about kind of the transition from IQ to EQ, or that's kind of a reinvention because it's a refocus, right? It's a refocus of, it's almost like for anybody out there who's a parent, right? Before you have children, it's all about you and your stuff. But the moment you have children, it changes, it shifts. The focus is on others outside of yourself. And I really felt that way as I became a leader. How do you take all of those years of focusing on how do you apply your skills to how do you apply your wisdom and experience to enhance the skills of others, right? So that was almost an evolution of what you've learned, what skills you do think are relevant, and how do you apply that to others. So in a way, I guess it could feel like it's a reinvention because it's a refocusing of your energy and what you bring to the table every day. It really is, at least this is my perspective. This has always been my perspective as a leader. It isn't about me. Now, I like to challenge a lot of leaders. If your intention, this is just my opinion, is to get into a leadership role because you want to achieve more money or a title, and order folks around and have the spotlight on you, I would argue that maybe isn't like really leadership. That's beneficial for you, but real leadership, and this is where it felt like an evolution for me rather than reinvention. I was very comfortable with that. I was very comfortable with, this is not about me. And I'll give you a quick example. I remember a time I was working for an organization, which will remain unnamed. And I was having a conversation with some colleagues around, other managers. We were dealing with software development teams at the time. And one of the leaders, one of my colleagues, was very uncomfortable with the engineers making more money than them. And I literally asked, why? Your job, the leader is just a role on the extended team, right? And I sort of challenge that, going, look, there's plenty of times when I've been in a position where if my engineers, based on the skill set they bring, right, and we both come from the Cisco world, we've seen a lot of brilliant engineers out there. that well exceed from a rewards perspective or salary perspective that leader? Oh, absolutely. You pay people what they're worth for their talent, 100%. Just because you're the leader or even executive, it was like, no, you don't have to make more. That's not by default. So for me, that's always been very comfortable. But I do think that can be a challenge, right? People get really caught up in whether or not getting into a leadership role is like, I want to make the next step up in my career because I want to achieve more, whether it's financially or something else. But this is where it gets tricky. It's very, you got to be careful with that, right? I think organizations get themselves in trouble with that when they're hiring people into roles based on skills that don't apply to leadership, but then they become leaders and then things break down. So for me, it was definitely something new. I would say it was, like I said, a refocus. Like, what is my new focus now? It used to be perform and add value through my skill set. Now it's perform and add value through your ability to lead, inspire other people who are applying those skills and being very comfortable. For example, it's not about here's the deliverables, make all these things happen, team. There's a lot of things that you deal with as a people leader. They're looking up to you, right? You're expected to make the decisions. You're expected to move. That if as for first time managers, all that can be very, very different, right? And in some cases very difficult, having difficult conversations. Another area that is new as you come into the world is you're the one that sets the vision. You're the one that sets the strategy. Is if you're an executive, you're the one coming up with the strategy for entire organizations, right? There's no one else. It's you. You have to come up with that and then motivate people to achieve those visions. Help them feel part of that. And these are all skill sets that until you get into a leadership role or put into a leadership role, you don't touch on those things, right? So you have to be really, I would say one of the things that's helpful is really explore that as a people leader, really lean into that. Do I like having difficult conversations about anything from, an employee's family situations getting crazy or whatever it could be, or professionally someone's not performing. These are all the things, these are the non-sexy things that people leaders deal with every day that you never hear about, right? It's not just about what's being delivered and the timelines and the roadmaps. And I think that's a really key thing. And if your level of comfortableness around that is good, you're going to transition easier. If it feels awkward to you, by the way, anyone can be a leader though. Anyone can be a leader. I think some people maybe are born with some of it's more of a natural, like being more comfortable with some of those elements. And so they can accelerate into it a little bit easier, but anyone can learn it. The trick is to keep your mind nimble, keep your mind humble. Nobody expects leaders to be perfect. That's another thing. When you're a subject matter expert, you are expected to be the expert in that subject, right? But as a leader, being vulnerable, being open, and being nimble is very key. You do not expect that perfection from your leaders, but what we do expect is, sure, a little bit of vulnerability is good, but we expect you to take action. We expect you to make decisions, right? And that's one of the things I always encourage leaders is move and take action, right? You might move in the wrong direction. That's okay. But move, you can always pivot and come back. It's just never be the deer in headlights, right? It's never the freeze in place, do nothing. Human beings respond to energy and movement, and I think that's really key. But again, the reinvention is all about the refocusing of all of your energy into how to really apply all that momentum for others versus your own self, while also still, it is still your career as well as a leader. You're still, it's not completely selfless in that sense. You are trying to move and probably support your personal life in whatever way that you'd like. So it is a transition, though. I often refer to it as kind of crossing the chasm. It's a completely different world. And if you're fortunate enough to be in the military or even security environments, I think a lot of individuals there oftentimes can be thrust into leadership scenarios, even beyond role, because of the nature of that work, right? The nature of that work sometimes says, hey, this situation is happening. Someone has to step up and people, and then they go, wow, I like this. I want to pursue that. then it becomes a challenge to translate those scenarios and those things into the opportunity to formalize that into a more formal role. We can talk more about that. Um, but in the corporate world, it's not always that it can be, but it's not often the case where the same sort of scenario happens that way. But it can. But yeah, it's definitely a shift. I would call it an evolution only because there's so much you can learn about yourself too. I think one of the keys of being self-aware of where you are, and again, maybe focusing on not, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but focus on that shift and that mindset being more open and having it be a focus of your skills, your wisdom to unlock the potential in others. And that's easier for some than others, but that's really, in my mind, that's what the shift is. And it can be super enlightening for any leader that's doing that. Very rewarding too. Very rewarding. And this is just my humble opinion. Well beyond any monetary climbing corporate ladder type situations, seeing human beings, seeing their potential. And by the way, I tend to. I think part of what I've learned is I'm as a leader, I'm also very open to different and diverse backgrounds of people. Um, I will just share, if you don't mind, I very much respect and love folks that come out of the public sector and the military because they've demonstrated those skills. They have amazing character. A lot of the things that I think are the foundation of what will create great leaders, they're there. It becomes a challenge because a lot of people in the corporate environment don't understand. And sometimes people that are coming out of the public sector or military have a hard time translating those skills into a new world. That can be a challenge. Me personally, I like good people, good integrity, good loyalty, great skills. I see it. I just wish there were more leaders like that that would go, absolutely, right? I can teach you anything. I can teach you anything. If you're a good human being, then we can rock and roll. But not everyone's like that. So there's a little bit of a challenge of the translation. And getting into a leadership role is even that much more difficult, right? But it's doable. And that's where maybe we go back to reaching out and leaning on your network, talk through it. Everyone has an individual case, right? But there's enough commonality like to take action and make something happen. I think that's really important. So I would encourage people, again, don't be the deer in headlights. Don't wait for someone to come your way. Take action, reach out, start to explore the skill sets, how to translate them, how to articulate yourself as a leader, and start going for those opportunities. That would be, I think, the best advice
Yeah.
I can give.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think, sometimes we overcomplicate things, and fear has a big thing, to do with, emotionally, a lot of, folks are just not prepared yet, for whatever reasons that they make up, in their own minds about whether or not they're capable. Well, but fortunately, you've written a book and it's a guide, and I have to say this, I just received it. I read it
Great.
uh, completely. It's a wonderful guide. And I think as a leader, what I found, very beneficial is, there's foundational principles that are in this guide. And it's a way for even experienced veteran leaders to, have that base foundation reminders of where you need to focus and key in on. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about what I see as the model here of these,
Sure.
these five key areas, followed by these four key traits for being an effective leader. But more importantly, then the three skills that you've identified in each of these traits, which really allows an aspiring leader to focus their development. And having a model like this, and from a big picture standpoint, having a framework somewhere to begin that process of learning, filling gaps where you feel more comfortable in areas where other areas, you recognize, look, these are areas that I can add to my own personal development plan and focus in and help me evolve into that leader that I want to become. Talk a little bit more from a high level standpoint about the model that you describe in the guide in Leadership Uncomplicated.
Yeah, no, it's great. And thank you for taking the time to read through that. It's great to hear your opinion, by the way. I really love that and respect that. One of the things and sort of the reason why I decided to write this book, in particular, Leadership Uncomplicated, is I'll put it this way. There's a lot of amazing, right? There's a lot of amazing material out there by a lot of amazing folks on the subject of leadership. When I looked at a lot of that, I thought this is to kind of put it in the world of like academia, maybe it's like this is the calculus. This is this amazing math out there, right? The fundamental issue I have though is especially at the front end of leadership, um, people aren't really failing at understanding right all this amazing calculus out there, failing at the basic arithmetic, the adding and subtracting, the fundamentals, right? A lot of times, maybe if I put it in a martial arts sense, like everybody looks and goes, I want to be a black belt. And being a black belt is amazing, and they see examples of martial artists who have this skill, but everyone starts day one white belt, right? It's a journey to achieve that, right? It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to achieve that. So leadership uncomplicated is really, I wanted to make the subject of I'm entering into the world of leadership. There's a lot of moving parts. How do I make this accessible? How do I give people the principles so that there's almost like a blueprint to follow this model, right? What are the 5 areas to really focus on? By the way, part of the model isn't just how to be a leader in the sense of the fundamentals there, but also how do I take care of myself? How do I enjoy the journey myself as a human being exploring the world of leadership? And so I wanted to make it accessible, very digestible, uncomplicated a bit to give someone a reference point to guide them, but also really kind of hone in on follow these fundamentals, keep the bigger picture in mind, and it's a strong foundation to sort of lead again moving forward with confidence, because a lot of it it's a lot, it's a lot. So hopefully it helps just go, okay, if I can follow these things, a good blueprint, a good sort of playbook, if you will, you'll be off to the races in no time, and it's just a good fundamental start.
Well, look, I'd really love to go deeper into the content of this guide. I think, having gone through it and looking at it and, wishing I had this, 25 years
Good.
ago, right? 30 years
Yep.
ago. Because, we really, it was really upon ourselves to sort of, learn on ourselves. And we, you and I and sort of our, our era, our generation, the responsibility of development, and those sorts of things was really put on us. And it's, you own your own career development, and it was really up to your own initiative as to how far you would take that. And I think today, more so than ever, especially with, I think, just in terms of how things have gone through cycles, and now I think as leaders, you have to do more than just provide resources for individuals to learn about things or develop skills. You really need to participate in that development with, your team, and demonstrate things and work with them to really build a program, but going beyond even coaching, again, really being a participant in that development process and guiding them as they navigate forward. So, guides like this formal way of documenting, a certain path, or tools that they can leverage and utilize based on data. Also, I want to
Yep.
make sure that the audience understands that your books is support your guide is supported by a lot of data in terms of the guidance that you're providing to individuals. And I think that's absolutely relevant and important for people to understand that the model and how it's applied, and understanding that there's measurable results that can be achieved by following these very specific things. So, hats off to you for putting this together in a format that does make it easily digestible, as you've indicated. And I'd really like to see and look at probably going deeper into these very individual, specific areas and some of these traits, because I think in the long
Yeah.
term, providing some sort of training component to what you're doing in releasing and publishing this guidebook is needed, right? We need that supplementary training so that the models are understood, they're applied correctly. We focus our attention in the most efficient, manner possible. So, would love to have you back. Maybe
Yeah.
do a series, right? We have a series about each segment, as you've indicated in the guidebook. Would love to bring you back to do that, Bryan, over the course of whatever cadence feels right about doing something like that. But no question, the content here is overdue, and there really are no formal programs, especially in our industry, in the physical security industry, for leadership, right? You can learn about executive protection, event security, security operations, all of these, different areas in terms of what security comprises. But when you talk about being prepared and trained as a director of safety and security, or someone at a C level, understanding the dynamics or nuances in this particular space, it really just doesn't exist. And that's sort of where
Yeah.
I think you and I have talked about in great detail over the years. That's long overdue, and hopefully we can bring some of that content to the audience that sees value in doing those sorts of things, and looking at developing sort of this next generation of leaders. Any final thought, any bit of guidance that you could leave someone with who, again, is aspiring to become a leader? Anything that you feel, a point that you've, maybe articulated earlier, do you want to reemphasize or elaborate a little bit further, or something that, you can leave someone that it's going to resonate with them who's really considering, that evolution and becoming a leader?
Yeah, I often have this saying. I think it started with maybe in the dojo, but certainly with my kids, that we live in the reality of our own design. And what I mean by that is, and you kind of touched on it right there just a couple minutes ago, we are the captains of our ship and our careers. So I would encourage folks, if you like what you're sort of hearing, is lean in, start to think about what are you going to take action. It's not about just reading books, by the way. That's great, right? Get some knowledge, but one of the things that you maybe start to do to practice leadership skills is through data and good knowledge and understanding, but take action, put something into motion. You are the leader in your life, right? You may not have a leadership role in some company or some organization, but you are the leader of your life. And that's very important to start to think of it that way. You're navigating all these complicated things every day. You just want to put it in practice in a formal professional manner. So yeah, you can certainly read, get some fundamentals under your belt from a knowledge perspective, but start to reach out. Whether it's to me, I'm certainly happy to help explore with anyone, because I like to see people move and get to where they want to be and achieve the things they want to see. And so, yeah, take action, start to make a plan, and put it in motion.
Great, Bryan. Great advice. Hey, really appreciate your time today and the content, everything we've gone over. There's a lot of value in what you've provided today, so really appreciate it. And I look forward to bringing you back on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right. Take care, Bryan.
Thanks, Ken.